I'm the Sega Scourge, and welcome back to another Sonic What If, for part 2 of What If Sonic Lost His Memory. When I developed part 1 of this What If, I did not expect such a huge response, especially considering I thought it was one of the more bland ones compared to Werehog, Emerald, Gamma. You guys really wanted a part 2. Over 2,000 votes on what the next video should be, and 50% of you voted for this, so I'm pretty excited to bring it to you. I've never had such a high demand for a follow-up part. Well, except for Werehog, which I'll be doing next, by the way, so don't worry, part 3 is coming. Before we begin, let's summarize what happened last time, but I'd recommend you check out part 1 if you need the full refresher. We began this story with an alternate finale to Sonic Adventure 2, in which Sonic took the plunge to Earth instead of Shadow. This of course resulted in Sonic being the one to awaken with amnesia at the beginning of Sonic Heroes, teaming up with Rouge and Omega to form Team Dark, or Team Dark Blue as I like to call it now. As the story progressed, Sonic sought after the truth about who he is, but slowly began suffering from painful flashbacks, depicting images of his battles with Knuckles, Shadow, and more. Sonic misinterpreted these memories as a sign that his old allies were in fact his old enemies, unwittingly alienating himself from his former friends with a series of hostile actions. The biggest bombshell came just after the battle with Metal Overlord, when just as the heroes tried to confront Sonic, Silver the Hedgehog made a sudden appearance, attacking Sonic and telling the others to get away from that monster. Sorry for that cliffhanger ending, by the way. I just couldn't resist. Now, I've seen a lot of theories on why Silver has shown up, and a lot of you have predicted that Silver's arrival spells the beginnings of an early Sonic 06 story. But I'll say right now, that ain't it. This has nothing to do with Mephiles, Iblis, Solaris, nothing like that. Silver has arrived from a completely different future to stop a completely new calamity, and the clue to what that calamity is was actually sprinkled gently in part 1. A few of you did guess what it was in the comments last time, so to you guys, massive kudos for thinking outside the box. Alright, I know how much you've all been anticipating this, so I won't waste any more of your time, and just jump right into part 2 of the story from right where we left off last. Sonic skids along the cold metal floor and onto his back, having been hurtled through the air by Silver. The grey hedgehog aggressively marches forth, pushing past Tails and the others like they're not even there. Sonic flips to his feet, meeting eyes with Silver, knowing instantly that he was the one who attacked him. Sonic tries to rush down Silver, but is once again immobilized by the hedgehog's ESP abilities and slammed into the floor headfirst. The heroes spring into action, and before you know it, all 4 teams are charging Silver from behind in an effort to defend Sonic. Their combined efforts are futile, however, as Silver binds them in place with his psychokinesis as they get close. Even Shadow's power isn't enough to break free of this hold, and since the Chaos Emeralds have disappeared once again after they were used against Metal Overlord, Shadow can't abuse Chaos Control for an easy victory like he did in 06. As the clash unfolds, Dr. Eggman watches from cover nearby, equally as bewildered by this mystery hedgehog's sudden appearance. He observes as Sonic strains in an attempt to regain control over his body. Silver focuses his attention on the blue blur. "Struggle all you want. It's no use. You can't break free." With a look of total disgust, Silver raises his other hand and forms a psychic knife, ready to slice Sonic in two. With Sonic's life in imminent jeopardy, Shadow utilizes the only ability that doesn't require an emerald or the use of his hands. He apologizes to the others for what he's about to do, telling them to brace themselves as best they can. Before any of them can process this, Shadow's body pulses with a searing red heat. Silver turns, but it's too late. Chaos Blast! Fiery energy fills the psychic field and swells it up like a bubble as Silver hopelessly tries to restrain the expanding force. The blast quickly overpowers him and tears through his hold in a massive shockwave, blowing him away and everyone nearby. As the dust settles, Shadow emerges from the smoke, stood firm. The entire cast are now floored. Some are groaning in delirium, some are completely out cold. Silver comes to his feet, trying to shake off the attack, but before he can retaliate, Shadow appears behind him, and with one swift roundhouse kick, Silver is sent skipping across the floor and onto his face, defeated. The next thing he knows, Silver's eyes open, and he begins to regain consciousness. only to realize he's the one who can't move now. Vector the crocodile has him held off the ground in a reverse bear hug, mercilessly tightening his grip once Silver is awake again. The others are stood around him, their eyes piercing him with a fierce stare as Sonic stands behind them, still recovering from the battery he received. Silver squirms and tries to reason with them, insisting that they don't know what they're doing. Shadow then steps forward and raises the palm of his hand to Silver's face, ready to unleash a Chaos Spear the moment Silver tries something funny. He demands answers, grilling Silver on who he is and why he attacked them. With only a moment's reluctance, Silver tells them his name and where he originated from. He came from 200 years in the future to destroy Sonic and prevent a global catastrophe. Naturally, the Sonic heroes don't believe such a fantastical tale, but Silver insists that it's the truth, going on to detail the not-so-distant future. One day, not too far from now, an army of soulless androids that look just like him will appear from nowhere. Nobody knows where they came from or why. All we know is that they decimated the world. There's nothing left but ruins. Anyone that could fight back was wiped out, and for 2 centuries, their unrelenting goal has been to seek out and destroy all organic life on the planet. He explains that there are only handfuls of survivors left across the globe in his time, and in an attempt to fight back, they gathered the resources to construct a machine that harnessed the power of the future Chaos Emeralds to travel back in time. But the machine could only handle a one-way trip, and as the strongest fighter of his era, Silver was selected to make the journey. And before you say it, yes, Silver has come back to stop the androids. I know. The gang try to make sense of the overwhelming amount of information they've just heard, but still, they don't believe Silver's story. Vector even goes on to say that, "This guy must have a screw loose or something." I can't do Vector's voice. But then, Rouge chimes in out of nowhere, revealing something eerily coincidental that lines up with this world of tomorrow. When she first found Sonic alive, he emerged from some kind of mechanical pod in a hidden Eggman base. She didn't think anything of it at the time, but a little while ago, just before Metal Sonic appeared, she and Omega discovered a chamber with more of those same pods, and each of them contained another Sonic inside. The group are stunned by this revelation, all except for Silver, who seems to have already known about the pods, simply stating that, "Those weren't the only ones. There are more." Hearing this news, Sonic is immediately outraged. He's been searching for answers about his past through all this insanity, and now he's found out that they've been keeping this from him. This is when Tails, Knuckles, and Amy first realize that Sonic has actually lost his memory, thus explaining all of his out-of-character actions so far. Rouge insists that she was going to tell Sonic what she found when the time was right, fearing that it would only upset him. But Sonic is more than upset. He feels betrayed, having actually started to trust the two of them. He grinds his teeth, his shaking hands become clenched fists, and he brushes the empty compassion aside, demanding to know where these androids are. The final straw snaps once he learns that they've been reduced to ashes by Omega. His expression turns from anger to a calm and empty bitterness. He turns and walks away from the group. Amy and the other heroes try to get a word in, but before they can, he simply says, "Shut up. I've had it with all of you. Leave me the hell alone." Language! Sonic storms away at a full-speed sprint, running to the edge of the final fortress and jumping off into the clouds below. From here on out, he's on his own. The team are left feeling blue, no pun intended, as the Chaotix contemplate on what to do with Silver. Should they let him go, or take him with them for more questioning? Dr. Eggman, who's still lurking nearby, cracks an ever-so-villainous smile after everything he's just heard. Just then, one of the Egg Fleet battleships that was damaged in the earlier fight drifts into the final fortress, slamming and grinding into the side. The heroes are flung onto their backs after the impact, and Vector loses his grip on Silver, who uses the moment of chaos to escape, flying off into the distance. The final fortress leans viciously sideways in the collision and nosedives into a descent, with the Sonic cast scrambling to hold on as they slide towards the edge. Flying characters like Tails, Cream, Rouge, and Charmy manage to grab a hold of everyone and carry them off of the airship. The Egg Fleet plunges out of the sky and crashes into a nearby mountain range, exploding into a giant fireball. The heroes land and regroup, checking that everyone's okay. Amy's mind then immediately turns to Sonic, shocked with the knowledge that he has no memory of her. She worries for his safety and well-being, while Cream and Big do what they can to console her. Tails and Knuckles share her concern, as does Shadow, who incites the group to head out in search of their friend. They're sure that, if they can find him, they can help him remember who he is. Rouge feels partially responsible for the situation, and for Sonic, so she opts to help the group find him as well. She then turns to Omega, who's paying no attention to the discussion, instead surveying the Egg Fleet crash site. Rouge asks him if he'll come with them too. Omega flatly refuses and begins to leave, much to Rouge's annoyance. Omega has no attachment or desire to help them track down Sonic. He's looking for Dr. Eggman. He knows the Doctor survived the crash and sets off in pursuit of completing his revenge mission. The mention of Eggman sparks Vector into a fury, realizing they let him get away without their pay. But Shadow suddenly steps towards them and asks a favor. He requests them to dig up any information they can on this Silver character, while they focus their efforts on Sonic. Vector says they've done more than enough pro bono today, and promptly asks what's in it for them. Espio and Charmy convince their boss to reconsider, who, after enough badgering, finally caves in and agrees to take the case. From there, the cast divide, wasting no time. Meanwhile, a tormented Sonic cuts across the land at blistering speeds, looking for a place to collect his thoughts. As he ponders where to go, a flare of pain once again appears inside his head, so sudden and sharp that he trips into a massive rolling wipeout. As flashes invade his mind's eye, they reveal a familiar location from Sonic's past, Green Hill. Sonic decides that's where he needs to go, and before long, using what little recollection he has, he finds his way there. Finally at peace, Sonic takes in a deep breath and admires the serenity of the picturesque mountains, green fields, and beautiful blue lakes, feeling right at home here for some reason. The tranquility is spoiled, however, the moment he catches sight of someone watching him from a mountaintop. It's too far to make out clearly, but he realizes the figure bears a striking resemblance to him. In that moment, the onlooker darts away, leaving a blue streak in its wake, and Sonic heads after it. He chases the interloper across the peaks, through the subterranean caves, all the way to a set of red metal doors hidden inside. The doors are slightly ajar, and the mystery figure slips through. Sonic follows it inside, unearthing a gigantic chamber, similar to the one he woke up in when Rouge found him, and as the lights turn on automatically, he sees endless columns of the same containment pods, far exceeding the amount discovered aboard the final fortress. Sonic steps towards one of the pods and wipes a layer of condensation from the glass to lay eyes on a sleeping duplicate of himself immersed in green liquid. He jumps back in fright, trying to make sense of it all, when suddenly he hears footsteps approaching from his side, and Dr. Eggman steps out from the shadows. Though cautious, Sonic is somewhat relieved to see a familiar face, feeling far less antagonistic towards Eggman than you'd expect, having worked with him earlier to fight Metal. Eggman approaches Sonic with his hands behind his back in a composed manner, stating that he's glad to see him.
"I knew you'd find this place, Sonic. I'm sure you have a lot of questions."
Sonic then asks the only question that matters. "Eggman, I need to know. Those androids, the ones that look like me, am I?" Then, without hesitation, the Doctor responds.
"Yes, you are my creation."
Sonic has played right into Eggman's hands. This was the plan he'd concocted after listening in on the confrontation with Silver earlier. He knows Sonic all too well, and knew he would eventually show up at Green Hill, and thus dispatched one of the Sonic androids to lure him here and then manipulate him into believing that he too is one of them. Spinning his web, the Doctor claims that Sonic was brought to life as the first of his line, but he was made different from the rest. He was imbued with free will. He stood alongside Eggman as his greatest ally in the battle for freedom, implying that Eggman's agenda is a peaceful one rather than world domination.
"That robot from earlier, Metal Sonic, he was created by that two-tailed fox. It changed its form to impersonate me and turn us against each other. Because they wanted your power, Sonic. They wanted to steal you away, but you wouldn't let them. That's when you were defeated and left for dead by Shadow."
This lines up with Sonic's memories of Super Shadow and his fall from space, as well as the other flashes he's been having. Slowly, he pieces together the fragments to a distorted past formed through Eggman's lies.
It was I who saved you and tried to hide you out from them. Unfortunately, their Metal Sonic grew beyond their control, and I was captured. That Batgirl got to you before I could. And Omega? Merely another killing machine made by those lunatics. I sealed him away in that room, hoping you could destroy him, but I never expected the two of them to manipulate you for their own gain.
Sonic is staggered by this lightning bolt of info and left completely speechless. As he stands with a look of eye-opening shock to the answers he seeked, he's suddenly clotheslined from behind by an unexpected intruder who scrapes to a halt and turns. It's Metal Sonic. He survived the Egg Fleet's destruction. Now badly damaged and with nowhere else to go, he's come crawling back to Dr. Eggman in the hopes that he'll take him in. Sonic gets up and angrily tackles Metal, crashing around the room into the various pods. But as the two of them face off, Metal is suddenly struck by an energy blast and slams into the wall. Dr. Eggman crashes forth, piloting a prototype of the Egg Breaker. He stands in front of Sonic and defends him.
Don't worry, Sonic! Stand back! I'll destroy this malicious machination.
Eggman begins spouting some heroic nonsense about protecting Sonic, as well as the fiction behind Metal's creation. In reality, Eggman's only doing this in an effort to further earn Sonic's trust. He's decided that he doesn't need Metal anymore, not when he has the Sonic androids. Metal can't believe what's going on. Having lost his Neo-Metal form and thus his ability to speak, he's unable to refute any of the Doctor's wild claims. I have no mouth, but I must scream, as the saying goes. The Egg Breaker stamps across the room and begins savagely assailing Metal, repeatedly hammering the robot into the ground. Due to his weakened state, Metal Sonic is physically crippled and unable to properly defend himself from the attack, as the Egg Breaker's massive spiked ball slams into him, piercing and fracturing the blue robot's tiny frame. Eggman's not being the best dad to Metal at the moment. Just then, using close to the last of his energy, Metal activates his black shield and deflects the Egg Breaker's arm for only a moment, allowing him to slip away. With no other choice, a mangled Metal flees the scene and vanishes into the wilderness, utterly crushed and cast out. Sonic turns to pursue Metal, but Eggman says to let him go. He won't make it very far in that state. He then reapproaches Sonic, resuming the exchange from before. He asks Sonic what he's going to do now that he knows the truth, telling him that he won't stop him from taking whatever path he wants to, preying on Sonic's exasperated spirit while masking his conceited efforts with a veil of care. Slowly, he's reeling him in.
That grey hedgehog, Silver. I heard what he said. That the future was doomed by my own hands, by you and by the rest you see before you. That can only mean that I am destined to fail, that my creations will be taken from me and transformed into instruments of destruction. I'm determined to ensure that future never comes to pass, and with your help, Sonic, we can build a better one. We can change the world together.
The Egg Breaker leans downwards and reaches its hand out to Sonic. The blue blur pauses, staring back up at the Doctor's unknowingly deceptive smile. His earlier feelings of despair give rise to pure resentment towards Rouge, Omega, and the rest of the heroes, vowing to get even with them, especially Shadow for what he did to him, or rather what he believes Shadow did to him. After what seems like an eternity of thought, he makes his final decision and says, "If this is what I'm meant to do, then let's do it." Sonic raises his hand and places it on the Egg Breaker's finger. Sonic has joined the Eggman Empire. And that's where we're gonna leave this story for now. So, what do you guys think? Are you shocked by the reveal of this dark future crawling with murderous Sonic androids? What do you think will happen now that Sonic has been tricked into teaming up with Dr. Eggman? And what steps will his friends take in bringing back the Sonic they once knew? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments below. I've been the Sega Scourge, and I'll see you guys in the next Sonic What If. Take care.